Go now. Hello, I am Robert Ogilvy, Executive EQ Coach. And you have stumbled upon I guess it's not the Leadership Lunchtime live stream, but let's just call it that for now. Glad you're here. So this is actually airing on the weekend, on a Saturday, which is great. It's a good change of pace. And what I wanted to talk about, what I wanted to kick off this training with, is talking about ambidexterity. So I'm not talking about whether you're left or right-handed or that end of things. I'm talking about how well you can both explore and exploit business models. And the reason why I think this is important is it's actually all very top of mind. I'm just going to maximize my screen here so it's a little easier for me to see. Because we're living in an era now which demands both. And I'll explain why I think it demands both. Over the past 10 plus years, but really since the 2000s onward, and I will say, it kicked up quite a bit in the past 10 years. We've seen the value of startups. We've seen the value of making cool new technologies, of producing something great and being able to scale it to reach lots of people. We've also seen how, if it's working at its best, it makes lots of other ineffective, slower, inefficient, less coordinated ways of doing things, really kind of pointless, right? So it can circumvent lots of things, and so that's the gift of the exploration end of things, right? There's new capacities that can happen, and I actually would say that as the problems we're facing become more complex and systemic, we're going to need that, because those are more inherently tied into our high-level AI systems and business intelligence systems that could, from a data-driven perspective, comprehend what's going on and pump out solutions, as opposed to the human mind, which is more built for heuristics, right? So it can conceive high level which way to go, and it can take in some amount of data, but at some point, we're stuck dealing with our let's call it our comprehension and certainly our operational limits as humans, individually or in teams, etc. Okay, so that's the gift of startups. And then I'll go on to what's the gift of the exploit end of things. It really, in simplest terms, that's just there's a known working business model. We can use it. We can sell a product or service, and we know how to do that, right? In some sense, think of it as a known way to add value from an internal operational sense. We know what to do this, but also from a red ocean, like there's a confirmed known market for this, and they know about it, and they know they want this, and so there's value in that, right? Okay, so I don't think I'm blowing anyone's mind there. I think exploit is actually a little bit backhanded, though I like how similar the words are, so I'll just stick with that for now. Okay, so what's lopsided? What are the weaknesses of each of these models? Okay, so I'll start actually first with the weakness of the exploit model. It doesn't want to change. It is working off presumptions of how it thinks the market works. It kind of scoffs at the idea of there being something new, and even improvements it makes tend to be more convergent, more leaning up a direction it's already headed, right? So even when you hear people talk about Lean Six Sigma or process management, it's most of the time coming from this lens of how do we do more with less? How do we make this known direction more efficient, right? And there's a place for that, but again, assuming there is a known market there's a known pain that you can serve and reliably, you could say, profitably continue to do so, right? But it's really easy to get stuck in that myopic lens, and the more you're there, the more it's harder to, you could say, kind of see your own shadow, see your own BS, but really it's just like clearly see what's going on. There's a certain self-deludedness, and the larger the org is, the bigger the org is, the more easy it is to slip into that. Exploration. What's the weakness of the exploration model? Well, we've also seen this a lot in the last 5 years, the last 10 years, but particularly the last 5 years of startups, and it's this. I think the weakness of the exploration model is that you're playing off the kind of peak of that hype cycle where it's like, oh, what could happen? What amazing things could we do with this, right? But it hasn't been validated yet, or it's only validated at a small level, and you're talking about this large scale which hasn't happened. So, with startups, frankly, a lot of them get in this valuation game where they've proven nothing and they want to say they're this big, or they've proven this much and they want to say they're this big, and their valuations, or even for publicly traded ones, their market cap is ridiculous, right? And which is to say, totally, orders of magnitude inordinate compared to companies that aren't playing by the same rules, right? And so there is something, and honestly, I would say the wind in the past 2 years has really changed. There's been enough high scale, like unicorn, which is like, into the $1 billion valuation failures, that people just don't have an appetite for this stuff anymore, right? And I guess the most recent one in the past year was WeWork, right? And again, its premise, it's fine, office co-working space, that's all well and good, but it's trying to protect these crazy valuations don't work. And it's also, one of the ways it can kind of cook the books with that isn't just, the sloppy startup thing where it's fighting for top line revenue. It doesn't matter how much it spends to do that, as long as we can produce so that we've gained some market share and we have more money coming in than we did before. We're on the up and up. Doesn't matter how much of your war chest you spent to get there. And it was also the other, I think, the thing it was doing. It was doing inorganic growth, where it was acquiring other co-working spaces, but then would try to kind of spin under the same, oh great, we're just growing like gangbusters. It's like, no, some portion of that growth, half of that growth was just you acquiring other co-working spaces, right? That's not magical. That's just a shell game of who owns what, right? And I remember there was an HBR article in the past couple years that it brought up this notion of, as opposed to unicorns, which we kind of know are inflated, it was talking about this notion of zebras. And what it was trying to say is that zebra companies have enough growth, but they're steady, and they don't have to make crazy bets or valuations to make the whole process, be able to keep going forward, right? And so it was trying to say, you should, and I think particularly it was talking to like recently minted MBAs and, what kind of sectors do you want to go towards? Oh, just find some steady growing business that has this kind of zebra-like black and white quality of you can get a sense of what is and isn't working, and, own that out of things, right? I'm sure if you're I'm sure there's some amount of money to be made in cooling systems and refrigerator repair. Obviously not my market, but if you know what you're doing and you can carve a niche for that's fine, right? I think that's a bit on the timid end of things, because it was trying to say kind of like blue chip businesses fix everything, but it was really from a career counseling, career coaching kind of perspective. Okay, so the point is that startups, when they become unhinged from reality and real growth, it becomes very diluted. On a small scale, that's like, wow, the valuation of that particular startup is, seems inordinate, and then on a large scale for publicly traded companies, and the big four will be example of that. Certainly Apple and Amazon, I think, are like this. They can just do magic, ridiculous stuff. That is inordinate. I know. I think it's Apple. Amazon, of course. Amazon is in more markets. It can just signal that it's going into a market, and like that market, its stocks will rise like 30%, and that market's stuff will drop like 30%. And so it's like, wait a minute, you haven't even released a product or service or done anything yet, and like the market is already responding to this like inordinate magic spell you've put out there. It's nuttiness, right? Okay, so but what are let's recap. What are the gifts of these? So let's boil this down a little bit more as an individual person, as an individual manager and executive that is holding the business case for this stuff. Why do you need both these exploration and exploitation skills? Okay. I'll start with the exploitation because it's more straightforward. You need to understand what a good project looks like, what start to finish, how you would do something, the business operations end of it. And from a business intelligence standpoint, you would need enough sense of the indicators that would be able to tell you if something is on track or not. And the more something is kind of a known case, the more you can develop kind of signals and KPIs that make sense for that. The more BISNT makes sense, or you could think of it as more tightly linked to it. It's not qualitative. It's like this means something, right? And so being able to kind of manage that well, which partly relates to productivity of your team, leveraging the resources and the finances and the assets you have well, or the system tools, the IT tools. This is all part of the exploit end of it. The explore end of it is what's possible, what new thing could be out there, what new combination of stuff could I combine to make something better. But it's about adding new value, and the gift of that isn't just that you can help in new ways, but you might find that next gem, which not only is useful in adding more revenue, but is so super useful that it starts to make actually maybe even some of your old products and services irrelevant, right? And wouldn't that be great, so as opposed to someone else disrupting your products and services, that you were disrupting your own ones, so you were in control of the whole cycle, right? And what's even better is if you could do that in ways that continues to add value, because then it's like bit by bit you're bringing in more, not just gross revenue, but you're hopefully doing it in a way which is margin-wise profitable, right? So you need both of these skill sets. And I will say, it's like, I don't think I'm blowing anyone's mind saying the straight-laced people which are good at, forward and backwards financial calculations are great at the exploit. but they're not so much the other way around. And then the people which are more peoplesy, more creative, are great at the explore end of things, but they sometimes need to learn these control mechanisms just a little bit better, right? So we've come to a time when finally all business managers, all executives need some taste of both, and there is no excuse for not knowing, how to do the normal business operation end of things, but also how not to explore new solutions and what amazing new products and services might be able to do for you, right? So that's the long and short of it. We need these ambidextrous skills. We need to be able to explore and exploit business models. No one is off the hook anymore. No one is off the hook anymore. All right, I'm Robert Ogilvie, Executive EQ Coach. I hope you learned something today about business ambidexterity. I'll see you guys next time.